This is Kasama Lee, your community realtor. Well, all right. This is Kasama Lee at Remax Gold, serving Napa and Solano County. I am so excited today to have on our podcast someone I have considered a trusted friend and a highly competent professional in the insurance industry, Mr. Phil Irwin, president of Gold Insurance Solutions. Phil, so good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kasama. Thank you for having me here today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for making the time. I know I didn't give you a whole lot of notice, so it's just really great to have your wisdom. You know, I know that as a real estate agent, I've been on conference calls, challenging conference call, listening to you, really calming my clients and my friends down because they're losing insurance coverage, or I'm representing the seller and the buyer can't get insurance coverage, and we bring you in as the Gold Insurance Solutions to provide solutions. So I know that there's just been a lot of challenging cases that I thought it would be really good for the audience to hear directly from you on how things are going. And I know that it's been, California has been hit hard with insurance, right? So before we continue, I wanted to actually to let the audience know why you're my guest speaker. Could you share a little bit about your background, how long you've been in the industry, and like how did Gold Insurance Solutions come to be?
Well, I've been in the industry about 30 years, and my background really just is split between leadership roles within major insurance companies to being an agent, independent agent, owning or building an insurance agency. So I would say my time is split between the field and leadership roles. So I've really had a multitude of perspectives and also in lots of markets throughout the Pacific West. But about 6 years ago, we developed our Gold Insurance Solutions specifically to be part of Remax Gold, Gold Nation, and really just for the sole purpose of helping customers of Remax agents that are in real estate transactions and really just finding the most competitive options for them, finding the right fit, ultimately just making sure that the insurance aspect of a real estate transaction is a non-issue. It's just something that's not going to impede a sale. It's going to be seamless in that respect. And so you can just focus on the stuff that takes a little bit more time, the negotiation, the escrow process, and the other elements, and really just ultimately make it to where insurance isn't going to be a problem for you at all.
Yeah. So now, like, how many people are on your team and all that stuff? Because, like, didn't you start out weren't you like a one-man show when you started? Can you share that story? And I was like, wow.
I was the CEO and the janitor, and I still still feel that way sometimes. No, we're very involved with every aspect. I think there's about a mix of 12, I think 10 or 12 people on 12 people on our team right now, and really just make up various components of our team. But everybody's involved. It's a team oriented culture, like much of Gold Nation is. And really, at the end of the day, we just want to be the best resource we can, find the best solution. And regardless of what hurdles are thrown at us, we still want to find the best way to make sure that we get to the finish line and close close escrow without any problems, especially as it comes to insurance. Just to give you a general overview, because obviously we're in unprecedented times. It's referred to as a crisis, and there's a couple layers that really kind of highlight that. And so for starters, I just want to share a screen just to give you perspective of kind of when this all started, because it didn't happen overnight. It's been kind of developing over the last few years. So I'm just going to share my screen just to show one. So what you're looking at here is a growth chart for the California Fair Plan, and this is this is straight from their website. So what the California Fair Plan is, it's a safety net for Californians to ensure that you will have insurance if nobody's willing to write insurance in your marketplace or for your home for one reason or another. And the Fair Plan is an organization that their goal is to not be needed. So their goal is to see the market restored to where they have zero policies. So interesting, for an insurance company to have a goal of no sales or losing sales or not be needed or to lose customers isn't normal. It's a not-for-profit organization. But the purpose, so just to give you perspective, this timeline of 2019, it's right after this growth spurt that we see it go up, it's right after the campfire. So that was the fire in paradise.
Oh,
And
yeah.
in my perspective or my opinion, based on everything I've been seeing, is that was really the catalyst. That's the time point where insurance companies really drastically changed their willingness to write business in California, and for a multitude of reasons, and we can get into that. But this is the time frame that it really drastically changed. So if you think of this company as a benchmark to say, if this company is growing, it means things are really bad. If it's losing
Oh,
customers, if it's losing customers, it means the market, it's competitive and it's restored, and nobody needs to be with them. But the fact that they're growing at such an astronomical rate just shows you. This goes through June. They're projected to have well over 500,000 policies by the end of the year.
wow.
It's just a sign. It's evident that that the state is in a crisis,
Yeah.
that we're basically going the wrong way. So for a healthy, competitive, affordable marketplace with lots of options, we're going far away from that direction at this point.
Well, you have a very calming way of delivering not so happy news. I appreciate that. Well, a transaction can't close without insurance coverage. And I know that's been the dangling part for many transactions that I've heard about. And fortunately, I just been now what we do is like because we specialize more with sellers, and when we put the disclosures up on the listing, we make sure that we come to you to get a quote to make sure that there is coverage that could be obtained and make that part of our like disclosure package, so it takes out that question mark. Nobody needs to be surprised at the end.
That makes a lot of sense, and I applaud you for that, because again, I think that's a best practice that most agents that are providing a listing are making that part of the listing package.
Yeah.
And I had a call today from an agent in Southern California, and it was a scenario where it was a unrealistic quote that they were looking at, and then when they got the real quote, what they qualified for, and this wasn't with us, they're bringing us in at the last hour, it's far from what they estimated. So debt to
Yeah.
income became an issue, and now they're looking for an unrealistic number. We were able to meet them in the middle and get it down considerably, but still they're working with they started with an unrealistic number, and that's kind of what they set all the planning around for the loan qualification, and now they're running into trouble. So hopefully we can help them out. We definitely gave them a better option, but it's still probably not low enough. But
Okay.
again, it's an example. It's an
Yeah.
example. If they would have had that up front, maybe they would have planned differently through it. But I think they got further down the road. And again, our agency is available 7 days a week to provide quotes on any property. I think we're still averaging close to 800 quotes a week. If not more on any given week. So we're available to do that for any agent or consumer out there that just wants to know what would it cost for this property to get insurance. And every quote that we send out is viable. So it's one that's been vetted. We don't just give you a pie in the sky quote saying, hey, this is going to be competitive. We really go through every element to make sure this is the best available option, and make sure that once you have that option from us, that's something you can go and purchase if you wanted to go forward.
You can actually move forward with. Yeah, I think what separates agents who can actually provide solutions are the ones that think to the finish line and like provide the potential solutions to the potential problems that could come up. And
Right.
insurance is a big piece right now. And to be surprised, I mean, you just described a scenario where I was representing the seller and I brought the buyer to you because they could not get an affordable coverage to even, package the loan. And I remember that. So it's so, you learn from those things and you're like, okay, we're not doing that again.
Yeah. Well, the dynamics have shifted where, probably 6 years ago when we started, I would say realtors could be indifferent to insurance, where it could be something that they didn't get involved with or didn't
Yeah.
even think about, and it would just be taken care of. But
Yeah.
now, it's something that is, because of the lack of availability and the circumstances that
Yes.
could make a home more challenging.
Yeah.
It's really important. Like you said, you don't want this to be an issue in the closing or in the late hours. So you definitely want to make sure that you've got this worked out well in advance.
Yeah. So I know that I've referred a few friends to you. I mean, they're not all clients, but because I make myself, I'm like a 411 booth. So they're like,
Yeah.
oh, my insurance got dropped. What do we do? Kasama, help. And then I would bring them into you. So
Yeah.
can you kind of give us a perspective of why and I actually had one client that they had the home, they had lived in the home in Napa County for like I think 30 years or something, and then their insurance company dropped them, and I brought them to you as well. What what are some of the reasons if you could share with us that insurance companies are canceling and not renewing?
That's a great question. So they're receiving a non-renewal. I think the bottom line is, and this is my perspective. This isn't the carrier speaking, but this is what I'm seeing based on the actions from the companies.
Yeah.
Is that they're really scaling back their exposure in California. So there's really a couple of factors. One is there's an area called the Wildland Urban Interface, which is technically the brush market of California. And on the NHD report, it would show as a fire area, but it makes up a third of the state. So that's an area that over the last 6 years has really been carved out as an area where it's been more challenging. So anywhere that's in the foothills, you can kind of envision areas that have hills or rolling hills or brush or there's forest. It feels like you're in the forest. That's going to fall in the wildland urban interface. So that's one element. So that's a third of the state. The other areas, what we've really seen is these really aggressively, and you've heard announcements of some of these bigger companies saying, hey, there's a big company a little over a year ago that just said they're going to cancel, I think, 72,000 policies. And another company just said they're going to get off of another 17,000 policies. And there's another big company that said, we're going to stop writing insurance in California right now. They didn't say they're leaving. They just said, so there's lots of companies doing that aren't announcing it. So really what they're showing us is they're just lessening their exposure in the state. They're not leaving the state. They're just saying we're going to write a lot less business, but the business we want the people that are perfect. We want a home that has no claims. We want a buyer that has no claims. We want that's how it is. That's how it's becoming about, and that's kind of where at closings we're seeing surprises are being brought to us from where they're working with somebody else where they thought they had a quote and then they're finding out that they can't issue it for a closing, and that's because a claim popped up. So again, these companies want to make sure, and again, a year ago, 2 years ago, you could work through a prior claim or a prior loss. But now it's something where the few companies that are willing to write are really looking for things to be perfect. And so again, that's where you want to vet all of that up well in advance of the closing date, so you know if there's going to be anything to work through. And again, that's the benefit of having that stuff figured out before you even get into escrow.
Yeah, so a few years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, the clue report was like it was actually a requirement, and now it's
Yeah.
not like on the transaction. So what would you suggest? Like, so for me, if let's say if I represent the buyer, we don't know anything about the insurance claims, right?
Mhm.
What should be the first thing that we should do for our buyer client?
Well, you can ask us for a clue along with a quote. We can just ask us to provide the clue. So we can give you that information because in the past, when we were in a competitive insurance world, insurance companies would say, if you're looking at buying a house and you've never personally had a claim, but the house had a prior water loss
Like
in the past,
from the previous owner?
from the previous
Okay.
owner, from the seller.
Okay.
So the new buyer could come in and they would exclude that loss they wouldn't hold that loss against the new buyer because it wasn't their fault. They weren't living there when it occurred.
Right.
So in the past, they would exclude most companies when we're in a competitive place. They would say, well, we're going to exclude that loss. We're not going to hold it against you because it was the seller, not the buyer.
Mhm.
Well, now the companies are looking back on the property itself and on the buyer coming in. So they're looking at the buyer's history as well as the property's history and looking at it both ways. And every company has different underwriting guidelines, and we'll use that information differently. But the consistent thing right now is they're all pretty much saying, not 100% of them, but most of them are saying, we're going to look at it both ways. And again, that's something you can get in advance if it's disclosed or not. I know there's from the negotiation piece, that's part of the discussion. If maybe the seller's previous claims or loss history is impacting the ability for the buyer to get insurance, then I know that, or it's raising there's a surcharge as a result. I think that's part of the negotiations. So we can give you that information up front. It should be disclosed anyway. But those are all, again, they're not deal killers. Those are just things that you want to know in advance, so they're not items that are coming up at the last minute that you can know prior to making an offer.
Yeah, we want to eliminate as many surprises as possible because there's enough of them in each transaction without insurance,
Well, and it's annoying, and I think honestly, it's unfortunate that we're in this place because a lot of this stuff is insignificant. Even a small water loss or a small loss is going to impact you just the same. So the way insurance claims work is for homes is it's mostly based on the frequency of losses, so not the severity. So if a loss is just a few $100s, people think, oh, it's no big deal, or even if it's zero, they think it's no big deal. Well, if it's zero, the way the insurance companies look at it is they assume there was a loss, they reported it, and then they decided to just fix it themselves or not fix it.
Right.
So when there's zero paid out, that's the assumption that's made. But if it's a small loss, again, it's going to impact you just the same as a larger loss. And it's statistics. They look at it, and they say statistically, if you've had one loss, you're likely to have a second loss. It's just the way. It's just like car accidents work the same way. So it doesn't seem fair, but that's how they operate. Again, so you want to have the information up front, so we can run the clue. So at the time of running the quote, we can run the clue against the property and for the buyer. So you have all that information up front. You know what you're working with. And again, if you're a listing agent and you want to have a quote in advance, same thing, we can pull and see. And there are errors in it sometimes too. So again, if there's an opportunity to dispute that, then we can do that when there's time. But if you're trying to close, this stuff's all bubbling up the same day as you're trying to close, that's a little tougher to navigate through it.
It gets really hot. The bubbles get really hot when it's the day you're supposed to close. Oh my gosh. Everybody's stressed out.
Yeah.
As you were describing it, I was thinking of the analogy, or there's a parallel to, the claims history to the property, to a borrower's credit score, right? The delinquencies, the things that show up in their reports, and it affects their credit score. And it's sort of like the same thing with the property. If it has these inquiries or claims filed, it stays with the property, right? And does it follow the owner who's selling, that let's say they filed 3 claims. They sell the house, they go get, they move to another part of California. Do those claims, like history, kind of follow them?
Yeah.
So it affects them.
Yeah. And each company has, with their discretion or with their underwriting guidelines, will look at what the losses were, how long ago they were, the severity, and so again, it would be tied to them. And then again, there's going to be situations. So like if you have a John Smith and a John Smith Senior and a John Smith Junior, there's going to be cases where maybe there's a mix-up in the grandpa or somebody's being charged for their claim that their son did. So there is going to be some degree of error. And again, as long as we're ahead of it, we can dispute it. But it's all looked at, and it's really ultimately for them to decide which ones they're going to surcharge you for or penalize you for, or ultimately not insure you over. But it would follow the person. So it's going to stay with the property and go against the property, and it's also going to follow the person.
Yeah. With that, so let's say the deductible is $1,500. So I'm just using a scenario, okay? $1,500 deductible, which is a really good deductible, right? Because a lot of deductibles are a lot higher than that. I guess it depends on how you do the coverage. Let's say the damage is $4,000, but if you file a claim, so I'm just asking you now as like an individual, okay?
Sure.
So it's a $4,000 claim, I got to pay the $1,500 deductible out of my pocket. So the company is really going to just cover the $2,500. Now I have a record. The property has a record, and it follows me, right? If I decide to sell and move, I guess I should think twice before I decide to file a claim. Because once you file a claim, even if it doesn't pay out, like
Yeah.
let's say you cancel the claim, it still shows up as a what on the property, right? Or on
Right. I think it doesn't sound very good, right? And it's unfortunate because it's there to use it for when you need it. It's for the big stuff.
right,
And you shouldn't be reluctant to submit a claim when you have a true loss. But I think you should also have a threshold of what can I fix on my own? What am I willing to fix on my own? Because don't use it like health insurance or something where you dental insurance. It's really intended for the big stuff. It's a catastrophic policy. It's not for maintenance issues.
right,
It's for the big stuff. So you really want to think of it that way. And even inquiring with your insurance company, I've seen people inadvertently file a claim when they're just calling to ask questions. Most insurance companies will offer consultation, say, hey, I'm not intending, I just want to know, I'm weighing out the option of filing a claim. And so again, it's an option to just talk through it and talk to your broker or your insurance agent to see what makes the most sense. But again, don't be reluctant to submit a claim if you've got a major issue. That's what it's there for. It's
right.
unfortunate right now that our market is in a place where it becomes such a big issue because typically it shouldn't be.
It
But
wasn't
but I
like
think that
this historically.
right. And the bottom line is, and it's tough because if you hear the insurance companies talk, their retention is higher than it typically is, so they're not losing customers, but really it's because there's not a lot of places to go. And
Yeah,
I hear it in people's voices. They are reluctant to put in claims, and I don't think you should be. I think you should think about it. I think you should be thoughtful about it and weigh it out and have a threshold. Because say if it's within $5,000, I'm going to fix it myself. Or it's within $2,500, I'm going to just fix it myself. If you don't know, and I'll give you an example. We had a water loss at our house where I just saw wetness underneath our master bath,
wow.
and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. It's a big one. It was underneath it, and sure enough, it was a little. So I had a water loss, which is bad, and it ended up just being small because they couldn't replicate where the water was coming from. They were splashing water around, doing all kinds of stuff, and so I don't even know. They couldn't replicate it. So it ended up just being a little bit of sheetrock that needed to be fixed, and that was it. And it never happened again. So it was just a weird thing and not a big thing, but I ended up filing a claim on it. So you've got to use your instinct and just think
Right.
through it. The other thing is if you've got folks that have investment properties,
Mhm.
unless those are in LLCs, if you own investment properties under your name, those are going to follow. So let's just say you have water damage in one property and you own several properties, it's going to follow you. It's going to impact the insurance availability or your insurance premium on all those properties.
On all the other
So
properties. Oh my
if
gosh.
they're in your name, if they're in your name. So it's just something to be aware of. Just another element. And again, I'm not saying don't file a claim, but just do it thoughtfully. Make sure
Yeah.
because we do run into a lot of really small ones, where they're $50, $40, zero, 200, and people say, it was nothing. I could have just fixed it myself. Well, you probably should have because, now it's going to be a factor.
Now
So
yeah.
again, it's just part of understanding the circumstances we're in right now and really just knowing what is going to help you the most, and you're not creating any problems for you down the road. The insurance is there to cover you to use it as it's needed. But again, I just would say have a threshold that you're comfortable with. And again, if that's going to be the fact where you're going to say, I'm going to fix anything over a certain amount or under a certain amount, then I would also suggest raising your deductible to that level because that way you could also save some money in the meantime.
Right,
So,
right.
wouldn't
And
think
hope you
about.
never file again. Um,
Yeah.
so how long does it stay on? Like how long do the claims history, like how long do they stay attached to the property or to the owner? Or is it like the rest of your life or is there an
No, and
expiration?
let me clarify one thing first of all. And so that one benefit, so one good thing, silver lining, if it's a catastrophic event, so basically this is a major, and these are deemed, these are regional events. If it's a wind event, so we've got severe wind gusts, and that's when everybody's fences fall over,
Yeah,
and trees
yeah.
fall over. We hear about those. Same thing with so storms and for major fire events. It's
Mhm.
not a fire that's just isolated your kitchen. It's a regional event. It's a major event.
Yeah,
So a catastrophic something that's deemed a catastrophic event will not go against your loss history. It'll show in your history, but it'll be labeled. It'll have a cat code, so it will not go against your loss history. So again, rest assured, if you're in one of these major fires or major incident,
Yeah.
you know, it's not going to. The companies aren't going to hold those against you.
Since you didn't cause the catastrophe,
Right. Pretty
nature
much.
did. Okay, got it.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
or as a regional event that it was out of your control. So again, that's definitely a good thing. And the other thing is, other companies they look at the length of the time span from an incident differently, and they really have their own guidelines individually. I know another one that is tough is like dog bites. That's a very high. So water damage and dog bites are probably the two most frequent claims. Or they're up there. And so again, dog bites are tough because they stay with you very long. I think most companies have a long threshold for that, especially if you still have the dog.
Yeah.
So again, those are, I know it sounds terrible for the way I'm a dog lover. So
I
luckily
know. I'll
my
look
dog.
at dogs differently now.
Yeah.
I love them
But
too.
again, in a normal market where companies are competing for your business,
Yeah.
they'll overlook that stuff. Or if you add your autos or add your umbrella or do other things, they'll overlook things more. But we're in a market where really they're looking at individual. They don't want to grow. There isn't really a company that I know of right now that is aggressively trying to grow in California. Most of them are trying to have less business. So again, the business they take on, everybody's being very selective about it.
Yeah.
And that's what the FAIR plan is for, though. Just to reassure you, the FAIR plan is intended to be the insurer of last resort. So there's never a case in California where you can't get insurance on your home. It's going to be, but in other states like Nevada, as an example, we help the agents on the Tahoe side or the Nevada side of Tahoe, where we've got solutions in California. But on the Nevada side, there's transactions I know of 2 weeks ago that we couldn't get insurance for. So it could be
Wow.
worse. It could be worse. At least we have the FAIR plan to fall back on in California.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, as the insurance broker, you're able to connect the policy seekers to the FAIR plan. Like they would still go through you, in other words, to get the FAIR plan.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. It would be like any other transaction. We would process it just the same. And again, the quote we would provide would say, in this case, we went through all of our carriers and nothing else was available other than the FAIR plan for this particular house. And that's when we would provide a quote with the FAIR plan and also what's called a difference in conditions policy that provides the few coverages that are not part of the FAIR plan. So it takes two policies to make one with that case. But that's how we would present our quote with the FAIR plan to you.
Of course, I have like 50 more questions, but I think this is a lot for all of us to take home, for the audience to really. Yeah, and I just want them to sort of, I feel much more educated now, and I'm in the industry where, insurance is a big part of the whole package, right, of closing a transaction. But I've learned a lot from this, and I hope that our audience gets a lot out of this. And if you ever, I'm not Phil's public relations person or agent or anything, but if you are looking for coverage and you're just at your wit's end and your policy is getting canceled, please reach out to Phil, because you know what, he's somebody that I would go to. I mean, we even, talk to you about our personal property coverages at one point, and you're like, what you have is good. Don't touch it. And I appreciate that, right? So you're not just out trying to lock in coverages. You're actually giving expert sound advice that is best for the consumer. So everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out not to Phil directly. He has a team. He's the president of the company, but I will put your information. It'll be at the end of the screen, or just reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to get you connected, as many of my friends have been, to Gold Insurance Solutions. They have been a lifesaver, I have to say, for many of my clients and friends who were just really upset about not having home insurance coverage. So Phil, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom, and just thank you for being like cool and real and and just looking out for the consumer's best interest. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, Kasama. And if I could just add one thing, it's really important in these times that there's a term called insured to value. And it's really important that when you're buying a policy, and especially when things get stressful in the end when maybe things falling apart and you're just rushing to get something put together. I want to assure you we're very diligent about our process and we don't cut corners. And at the end of the day, if there's something that goes wrong with your home and there's a catastrophic event, a fire as an example, that destroys your home, we're going to make sure that the coverage is proper, that we're going to make sure that your home is insured to value. That's an area where we really pride ourselves on, and especially when things
Awesome.
get hot and heavy in the closing process sometimes where people are trying to drive numbers down for debt to income or other areas. We've definitely got a threshold where we're going to say, no, we can't go any lower. We're not going to go any lower. Because at the end of the day, if something does happen, we're going to make sure the check is delivered for the right amount of money to rebuild your home. So
Right on.
again, I think it's very important to keep that in mind, but we're here to help you, here to provide consultation anytime. Anything we can do to help you. You never owe us a deal or a sale. We're here to help you any way we can and just be a resource for you and your transaction. Thank you so much, Kasama.
Thank you so much for your time. All right, Phil Irwin, everyone. So I'm so blessed to be able to call him a friend and a trusted partner on the insurance side of this wild industry that we're in. Thank you for watching and take care.
Right back at you.